As much as this show host, me, loathes the National Football League, the Super Bowl is consistently one of the most internationally viewed events of mass spectacle since the moon landing. The Pentagon has spent countless millions trying to unite an increasingly polarized nation under F-15 flybys, military recruitment ploys, and the NFL's deployment of big words like battle and sacrifice. And also like the absurdly epic music on like Fox Sports, the one that goes like da-da-dun, yeah. So, anyways, I'm not going to do an a cappella rendition of that to everybody's relief. As President Trump says the U.S. will take control of Gaza and reshape the Middle East, we must remember that this is how it always ends, from within. The waning empire, twisted by fantastical delusions and hallucinations, consumed by lavish bread and circuses that promise that this ride can and will never end. And it combusts internally. So join us tonight on State of Play on Mint Press News to examine how the war machine is spent, why the National Football League is inextricably tied to imperialism, and why the circuses cannot last forever, because there is no more bread. Or eggs. I will try not to let my own personal resentment towards football color my analysis of what's going on here, even though I was forced to play it for years against my will, the most boring game. And I had a skill position, tight end, but still, anyways, if you need to hit someone, lacrosse is way more fun, but it's a rich people sport. And football is the team sport of the American masses. And it's uniquely American, though it is slowly becoming more of an international sport. And there was a lot of international viewership on this last Super Bowl. So I'm really not going to get into the halftime performance so much. I mean, we're definitely going to talk about it. But I'm saving the deep dive because the radical activist and rapper Immortal Technique is coming on to Colonial Outcasts, my personal podcast, this Thursday. So you can be looking out for that. And I think we're definitely going to touch on the Super Bowl. So just going to say a few things about the halftime show and the propaganda in general here at the end. Always and anyways, football is itself violent, exceedingly complex, and tactical. It's the most viewed American sport by a wide margin, played by over 1 million teenage boys in high school, which makes it the most natural locus of sports-related military recruiting and nationalism. Therefore, imperialism. Though, okay, so I thought I was surprised to see a Secret Service recruiting ad, and the Super Bowl is usually military recruiting ads, but it's all still the same nationalist crap you get.
America was founded on an idea of freedom.
Hell yeah, brother.
America's always stepped forward in time of need throughout our short but powerful history.
Ask not what your country can do for you. Ask what you can do for your country.
Tear down this wall.
We've been there for all of it.
Second plane hit the tower.
Our heroes are humble. They have an inner pride to keep this idea alive. Protectors are born, they're not made. America's Secret Service protecting this Super Bowl is asking a few more to step forward.
Oh my God. I hated that. So now they're doing propaganda as well, even though the Secret Service technically works for the Department of Treasury, last I checked, which is weird. Yeah, that was kind of egregious, but it's kind of the stuff you've always expected from the Super Bowl. So I'm just going to have to subject you to another minute of this stuff, but I guess the Secret Service is trying to rehab their image after the attempted assassination of President Trump at their pre-election rally in Pennsylvania last year. But no Super Bowl would be complete without a military flyover. Here's a little documentary of Marine helicopters that flew over Jackson Square in New Orleans, before the game. Just a snippet. Don't worry. We're just trying to establish a foundational knowledge base of the dynamics of Super Bowl propaganda. Whoa, New Orleans, Louisiana, United States. Hey, Frosty, brother. And then, yeah, we got a Marine helicopter. Oh, sorry, that's loud. And yeah, they're at the airfield. Then we got Jackson Square here. And that's very New Orleans. You got the marching band.
So day to day, we have various missions. The Huey is a jack of all trades. We could do anything from supporting insertions, extractions, to close air support.
Cool.
The Cobra is generally more close air support and deep
Cool.
air support. So it's great
Cobra.
to showcase our aircraft and the capabilities of the Marine Corps and to carry on the tradition that we have. So it's a great honor to kick off this 250 years of the Marine Corps and its history. It's a great honor to myself and as well as the unit.
Okay, well, anyways, there was more to play, but I guess the video blanked out because the communal will had this kind of gestalt psychic power that everybody was like, stop it. And the video just stopped for some reason. So, you know, things are definitely getting lamer. The Zazz isn't there anymore when it comes to like a lot of these military recruiting videos anyways, even in the military institutions. I promise I'm only going to expose you to one more just to get a really good idea of how robust this has always been, especially at the Super Bowl. This was from 18 years ago during the winding down of the Iraq War, a couple years before Obama's Afghan surge. It's the Navy. If you're just listening to the audio and you don't want to have to look at a screen, there's a bunch of boats. There's a bunch of dudes with guns and amphibious rafts. There's fighter jets. And then there's a dude in a minivan. And I guess the thing is, like, you don't want to be the dude in the minivan. Oh, this also heavily features butt rock. This is so early 2000s.
And to think, somewhere, some poor guy is buying a minivan. Navy, accelerate your life. Log on to the Life Accelerator at Navy.com.
Okay. That's kind of dystopian. So that's another hell yeah, brother moment. Don't buy a minivan. Type your name into the Navy Life Accelerator. But it's not just ads. Okay, someone in the chat was like, "Yeah, I'm on Team Minivan." You know what? You in the world, especially like, yeah, everybody's better off that you didn't type your name into the Navy Life Accelerator and you just bought the minivan. But it's not just ads, okay? Complaints about the creeping militarization of the NFL are almost as old as complaints about how current finesse dynasties always get the defensive pass interference calls. Boom, that's a niche reference. If you don't know football, don't even worry about it. I feel kind of lame by even adding that into the show notes. So that the NFL found a way to monetize patriotism, which we'll get to in a second, shouldn't surprise anyone. It's a money-generating machine. The NFL is the only surprise is how efficiently and directly they did it. You know, over the past few decades, this sort of behavior is par for the course with the NFL on other issues as well. It's not just the military. Like every October during a 5-year period in the mid-2010s, like the NFL would put its athletes in pink shoes, pink towels, gave refs pink penalty flags, and sold authentic alternate pink jerseys to promote breast cancer awareness. And the proceeds from those sales did not go to breast cancer research. And what little escapes the wholesaler distributor of the pink paraphernalia and retailer goes towards promoting screening and awareness. So it was basically just a grift, you know, banking off breast cancer awareness. So crossing the military sports boundary is nothing new. George Carlin's famous routine about the difference between baseball and football pays off so well because his description of football is laden with all the casual military metaphors self-important NFL commentators have injected into the game to make sure nobody dares take it anything less than deadly seriously.
And finally, the objectives of the two games are totally different. In football, the object is for the quarterback, otherwise known as the field general, to be on target with his aerial assault, riddling the defense by hitting his receivers with deadly accuracy, in spite of the blitz, even if he has to use the shotgun. With short bullet passes and long bombs, he marches his troops into enemy territory, balancing this aerial assault with a sustained ground attack which punches holes in the forward wall of the enemy's defensive line. In baseball, the object is to go home.
Yeah, so to examine NFL militarization, we begin with the salute to services. This is a whole institutionalized thing. Quoting from the NFL operations website from a 2023 update, quote, the NFL continues to strengthen commitment to military community through salute to service, November 1st, 2023. The NFL is proud to kick off the salute to service, the league's year-round effort to honor, empower, and connect with our nation's service members, veterans, and their families. Throughout November, the NFL family, including all 32 clubs and their players, will support and thank those who have served and continue to serve. Salute to service will be highlighted in games during weeks 9 through 11. Okay, I'm sure that's no coincidence. Weeks 9 through 11, and throughout additional special events led by the league and its clubs. Unquote. This is still going off the article. Since 2011, more than $66 million has been raised for the salute to service partners to support and uplift our nation's military community through resources, programming, recognition, and unique experiences in the United States and across the world. We are grateful for the men and women serving in our armed forces, for the many sacrifices they make every day while defending our country. Their courage and dedication assure us so many important freedoms and the opportunity to enjoy a little football, said NFL Commissioner Robert Goodell. Throughout the last 12 years, Salute to Service has allowed the NFL family to convey our thanks to service members, veterans, and their families, and support organizations within the military community across the world. The NFL is proud to highlight those who have served and currently serve in this country. Okay, unquote. Salute to Services also does a lot of work with like military and veteran nonprofit like TAPS and the USO, but we will not go down that rabbit hole because we don't have time. But suffice to say that on a cultural level, you cannot separate the military from the NFL. Hell, even in a command tent in Afghanistan, in the middle of like the Hindu Kush, we still made sure we were like putting on the Super Bowl. So there's also direct military participation in NFL events. You know, the military has participated in the National Football League events, including flyovers, with helicopters, with F-15s, flag waving and singing the national anthem. They've had military marching bands in there. The military also has paid NFL teams to perform welcome home promotions for troops returning from deployments, like having NFL players like meet troops like coming back from theater. The military has paid NFL teams to include color guards during the national anthem. It's the whole thing. In 2015, there was a Pup Mild scandal broken by NJ.com. It's like a New Jersey publication. I'm not really sure if it's still active, and it was publicized by PBS, the Public Broadcasting Services. The article by Andrew March entitled, quote, Report Defense Department Paid NFL Millions of Taxpayer Dollars to Salute Troops. The United States Department of Defense paid the National Football League more than $5 million in taxpayer money between 2011 and 2014 to honor U.S. soldiers and veterans at games. An investigation revealed this week. Again, this is from 2015. Nearly $5.4 million, and it's probably more, about twice that, was given to 14 NFL teams across the country, the bulk of which, $5.3 million, was supplied by the National Guard and the rest paid by the Army and Air Force, according to government records obtained by NJ.com. But instead of purely heartfelt salutes to soldiers from hometown football teams, the halftime segments were reportedly part of paid promotions under federal advertising contracts for the military. Earlier this week, and this was back from 2015, Jeff Flake, a Republican from Arizona, called out the spending as an egregious and unnecessary waste of taxpayer dollars. He goes on to have said, those of us who go to sporting events and see them honoring our heroes, you get a good feeling in your heart. Then to find out they're doing it because they're compensated for it leaves you underwhelmed. It seems a little unseemly. Yeah, the NFL is getting compensated by the Pentagon to do this stuff. It's a money-making machine. The NFL will make money wherever they can. And of course, being pro-military, especially during the global war on terror, it's less so now, was an excellent grift to be on. So in New Jersey, the Defense Department and the New Jersey Army National Guard paid the New York Jets a total of almost $400,000 during the 4-year period, according to federal contracts. And the team's agreement included money for a hometown heroes segment to salute the soldiers on the stadium's jumbotron at the team's home games, and also tickets for soldiers and their friends in box seats. So you want fancy Jets box seats? Join the Army's, boys. The investigation also revealed that the Atlanta Falcons collected just over $1 million, the most cash for any team, and the Green Bay Packers received the single largest payment of $400,000. And they realized the public believes they are doing it as a public service or a sense of patriotism. And again, it leaves a bad taste in your mouth. So the rest of the teams paid by the federal government, if there's any fans here, were the Baltimore Ravens, Buffalo Bills, Bengals. I'm not going to go through the whole list, but just about all the big ones that, consistently win games and stuff. So in the end, sure, Pentagon funding is everywhere. Hell, it was even here in Austin last year for South by Southwest Music and Film Festival, but got pulled for this year, 2025, after massive boycotts by artists. Military recruiting and the dying empire is taking a less brazen approach now. And that might be all well and good, but the Super Bowl is still the Coliseum of our time. Give them bread and circuses and they will never revolt. That was an immortal quote attributed to the Roman poet Juvenal about 20 years after the Roman Republic fell under the rule of the Caesars in 55 BC. So that phrase, bread and circuses, is used to describe a situation where a government distracts people from real problems. The phrase comes from the Roman Empire, as aforementioned, where the government provided free food and spectacles to keep the people happy. And the phrase is often used to describe people who trade their democratic freedoms for short-term solutions to ease their discontent. It applies to being good Romans, good Americans. They only have chariot races like these in Rome. Sorry, I meant they only have football like this here in America. So you want to appeal to a sense of national rejuvenation without actually doing anything to fix systemic problems of wealth inequality. Fine. Change the Gulf of Mexico to the Gulf of America. Can't buy groceries or deal with the military recruiting crisis? Blame everything on DEI, diversity, equity, and inclusion. And have the Super Bowl, which both liberals and conservatives watch, fall on the third week of the new presidency, once the flurry of executive orders are already signed. Panem et circenses. And you just remember last year when the Super Bowl went down, that is when the Israeli government and the Biden administration decided that the Rafah invasion would begin. So everyone was posting like all eyes on Rafah on their Instagram stories. And then the Super Bowl happened and that kind of went away. So that's just one example of the most recent and egregious Super Bowl. So distract from and hide the realities. Now we have a new thing that they want to use the Super Bowl to cover up, and that's developing Gaza. But we'll get to that in a bit. Distract from and hide the realities so people won't care as much with what's going on. We'll talk about domestic issues here in a second, like how people on the right are talking about how much they hated Kendrick Lamar's performance and how much they want Creed back, instead of how the Trump administration, through the machinations of Elon Musk, is cutting the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau under the guise of saving Americans money, when it was the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau who protects Americans from predatory corporations and has saved Americans over like $21 billion over the last 12 years. And it was made after the financial recession of 2008, so that wouldn't happen again. But no, I didn't like Kendrick Lamar's performance, and that's kind of like the depth of discourse. And in terms of foreign policy, right? Trump wants to take over Gaza, and during Kendrick Lamar's halftime show, a man flew a Sudan and Palestine flag. I'm sure some of you have seen footage. He was tackled by dudes in suits from either Homeland Security or the Secret Service. And since I don't think Trump left the Super Bowl yet at this point. It could have been Secret Service. And yeah, he was recently released. The man was with no charges. Major news outlets didn't show it. Liberals of all stripes simply made some tired and vengeful remarks about how leftists should have voted for Harris, then none of this would be happening, like Gaza. Brain rot, I know, but if Harris were in there, there would be no ceasefire, even though this one is potentially about to fall apart. Hamas today has said that Israel has violated the ceasefire. I mean, they've been violating the ceasefire the whole time, but I think it's come to a place where the violations have become intolerable. So we'll see what happens by tomorrow. And there was no mentions of Palestine in the performance. And aside from a very obscure commercial featuring Snoop Dogg and Tom Brady talking about why we need to stop hating each other, there was also no mention of Israel. This issue was universally played down and not mentioned. Everything that goes into the Super Bowl is completely intentional because no one in the ruling class wants you to think about this. Like, a lot of these billionaires are the ones who own the teams and the ones that own the stadiums and the ones that own the game, and they're curating everything because, again, they don't want you to think about this. So just focus on the Kendrick and Drake beef so you don't talk about this.
We'll build beautiful communities for the 1.9 million
This was from yesterday.
people. We'll build beautiful communities, safe communities. Could be 5, 6, could be 2, but we'll build safe communities a little bit away from where they are, where all of this danger is. In the meantime, I would own this. Think of it as a real estate development for the future. It would be a beautiful piece of land.
Would the Palestinians have the right to return?
Spent. No, they wouldn't, because they're going to have much better housing, much better. In other words, I'm talking about building a permanent place for them. Because if they have to return now, it'll be years before you could ever. It's not habitable. It will be years before it could happen. I'm talking about starting to build, and I think I could make a deal with Jordan. I think I could make a deal with Egypt. You know, we give them billions and billions of dollars a year.
I'd have to check on that funding, but they've categorically come out and said, no, we can't. We've already. All right. Well, first of all, before we tie this back into the NFL and the Super Bowl, that's just the root. Let's just root this insane assertion of blatant ethnic cleansing with something my friend Yahya, a Palestinian, put together. It's basically just a cut of all these different world leaders and people reacting to this absurd claim that Trump is going to be able to pull all of this off.
Take over the Gaza Strip, and we will do it.
Oh God, I think he put some. It looks like there's some noodly pneumatic instrument music going on in the background. So we'll see how long we can keep going on this one.
Job with it too.
Proposal a lot of people are talking about, obviously.
Everybody loves it. Everybody loves it.
Getting Iran a new deal, Mr. President.
No, the Saudis demanding a Palestinian state.
No, they're not.
Saudi Arabia has come out with a strongly worded statement. The kingdom says it reaffirms its unequivocal rejection of any infringement on the legitimate rights of the Palestinian people through Israeli settlement policies, land annexation, or attempts to displace them. Saudi Arabia emphasizes its position is non-negotiable and not subject to compromises.
He just said that it will be United States policy to forcibly displace 2 million Palestinians from the Gaza Strip. That is ethnic cleansing by another name.
Yeah, I think there's problematic. I think American troops being involved in that area seldom works that well.
No, it's ridiculous. I mean, it's not who we are as a nation to be looking at displacing people from their land and taking it over.
Is that now American foreign policy?
No, and it's nonsense.
We're not going to invade and occupy Gaza. What does Trump do? He just tries to change the conversation. So he went to that podium last night and thought to himself, what's the craziest thing I could say? What's the most insane thing I could say? Because I don't want people to talk about Elon Musk and my billionaire friends stealing folks' money. So he said this thing about Gaza.
Okay, yeah, and the music only gets louder and louder. So, anyways, yeah, you have European leaders, Brazilian leaders, all talking about how this is non-viable. And the last guy who spoke brings up an interesting point, which we will circle back to. He was a Democratic senator. He said Trump gets up on the podium, says the most ridiculous things to distract you from, his buddies basically stealing all the money from you. So why would he take this strategy? We're already done a few episodes on how unworkable and unfavorable an invasion of Gaza would be. But remember, Trump is a showman. This was done, in the certain time frame of the Super Bowl. Of course, the ceasefire happened. He was very proud of it. It was one of his big pre-election or pre-inaugural political achievements. And now he's kind of reversed position. And so I'm not going to rehash what we've already talked about on other episodes, but I will say this. I said this last week, and I kind of stand by it, and I think I'm being somewhat vindicated. Trump, is a showman. He's a reality TV show star. But what he tries to do is leverage his position as president in the power of the U.S. military and economy, because it still exists. I mean, it's still mostly unipolar in some ways, to basically change the deal. So the Saudis have said, no, we will not normalize with Israel. Well, guess what? Back in 2018, I believe Israel was ready to, annex huge swaths of the West Bank. Everybody was outraged. Trump said he would support it. And then he came back to the UAE and says, I want you to have a better relationship with Israel, and this West Bank annexation won't happen. Now, this is a way more extreme example. So what he does is he comes into a region, says a bunch of out-of-pocket stuff that is very destabilizing, very unworkable, but still very scary because he's the president of the United States. Oh my God, we don't want you to go through with this. So what he does is make these massive, wild, sweeping threats. We're going to take over Gaza. If we need to use troops, we'll do it. We're going to forcibly relocate all these Palestinians. It's not feasible. Okay, Jordan has a massive water problem, a massive chunk of their population is already Palestinian refugees, multi-generational Palestinian refugees with no right of return. Egypt, again, we've mentioned this, cannot absorb 500,000 to 1 million people into the Sinai Peninsula, with, the Bedouin taking up arms against that because that's their territory. And also, both economies are in dire straits. The multifarious reasons why this wouldn't happen are too numerous to go through on this episode. But he comes in, says these wild things in order to loosen political position, to kind of shake it up and say, now that I've said it, I can't go back. But we all know Trump goes back all the time. We already have seen one presidency from him. And he uses that as leverage to get people to loosen up, as I said, on their political stances. So maybe now Saudi, he's hoping, if he says, okay, we won't invade Gaza, we won't displace the Palestinians, but you have to normalize with Israel. Also, like Mohammed bin Salman, crown prince, wants to be king. The current king is not doing too hot, probably not long for this world. And if he wants to be king, kind of need to be recognized by the United States. So that's another point of leverage that Trump has on this. So he's trying to loosen political positions, but just like the tariffs, what did he say about the Mexican tariffs? He was asked by a reporter, tariffs on Mexico and Canada, what can these countries do to avert tariffs? And he said, nothing. There's nothing they can do. 12 hours later, he reversed position, but they basically gave him an off-ramp and offered him to do what they had already agreed to do under Biden: send more troops to the border, invest more in border security. So, yeah, cool. I wouldn't put too much stock in what Trump's doing. Of course, we have to deal with the hardened Democrat loyalists who are inherently reactionary. So they hear Trump say something and they're like, oh my God, that's going to happen. And I'm just like, when has that happened? We do know he's beholden to the Adelsons. It's very clear, and we brought this up before, that he bartered a ceasefire in Gaza so that they could intensify operations on annexing the West Bank. Fine. But when it comes to this idea of ethnic cleansing, how do you move them out? It's not workable. We've already talked about it. I'm not going to harp on it. But all these reactionary Democratic loyalists are saying, like, where does Gaza stand? Like, you did this by not voting for Harris. You did this. Of course, it would be the same policy, but you're definitely not going to find any solidarity there, and then you're not going to find any remorse or any actual investment in this, even though Palestine sits at the nexus of all these other issues that they purport to care about: the prison industrial complex, policing, name it. So, anyways, I just wanted to say that Trump that's just his negotiation strategy. He usually backs down. So, in the end, bringing it back to the Super Bowl, its whole purpose of the Super Bowl in America is newstainment. It's part of the newstainment complex. Distract, distract, distract. Sometimes with genuinely good political statements that the media will do everything to cover up. I'm sorry, but I have to actually talk about the halftime show. It is the transmission from the deep, dark heart of the Imperial Coliseum. I know that many viewers are not American and are like, why the F do I care about the Super Bowl halftime show? In short, because we are the empire, but I'll get into detail on that in a bit. Now, what's interesting about this is, now that we're talking about like bread and circuses, there's a lot of political messaging happening in the halftime show, but nobody reports on it. There's no breakdown. There is no acknowledgement that anything political happened. There was like a couple of infamous halftime shows. I wouldn't call them infamous, that like the media could not avoid talking about. And the one that springs to mind was in the 2010s. It was Beyonce did the Black Panther halftime show performance, even though having a billionaire do that while the Black Panthers were communists is like a whole different thing. Again, which I'm not really going to get into, but this one, again, case in point, highlights everything that we're talking about making this non-political bread and circuses. But I think, in my hypothesis, is that we've kind of passed that. So let's look at E-tainment news for a couple minutes about this. So they're all trying to make it about this Drake beef.
Kendrick Lamar's 2025 Super Bowl halftime show performance has the crowd going wild. The rapper kicked off his high-energy set with a message from Samuel L. Jackson, giving his best Uncle Sam impression.
That's not what was happening, but okay.
Salutations! It's your Uncle Sam, and this is the great American game.
Among the many songs he performed throughout the set, he made sure to include his major 2017 hit, Humble.
Be humble. Sit down. Be humble. Sit down.
And some people on the right were like, oh, look, they're dancing, in an American flag. And obviously the American flag itself is divided. Anyways.
Later, artist SZA joined Kendrick on stage and made us see all the stars.
I mean, that is also something that they focus on, because in between plays, they're like, oh, there's Anne Hathaway, there's Kevin Costner, there's like Danny DeVito. Look at all the stars. Let's not get political.
My
All right, I got to skip ahead because this is painful.
I want to perform their favorite song, but you know they love the sue. Yeah, that.
Oh, yeah.
No.
No. Anyways, cool.
Kendrick wraps the performance.
Yeah. So, yeah, someone's like in the comments, like, so what, stars? Well, I don't know what the propaganda is propping anymore. So there was some politics in there, obviously, some sophisticated messaging that went over the head of most MAGA people who didn't like it that it was only black people. Like, chill, bro. Y'all are the ones waging war on DEI. So why are you complaining? And that they can't understand rap. They're like, I didn't understand anything what they said. Like, I I don't listen to rap and I don't know much about it, but the same people who say that rap isn't music, it's the same people that say like punk and metal isn't music. So whatever. Anything countercultural, they're going to be like, no. Any sort of sophistication is going to be lost on them. And in case you're wondering, here's my take on the politics of the performance. Like, first, Samuel L. Jackson as Uncle Sam, playing like the same kind of role he did in like Django's, symbolizing the system's control, the establishment, and kind of the role that I suppose black men are supposed to inhabit in society. A couple of times he says like, oh, you can't be too ghetto. Yeah, which is the warning he gives to play the game the way white America expects, not to be too ghetto. And then you had like the Squid Game stage representing capitalism's harsh reality, the rich watching while poor fight to survive. Then you had the red, white, and blue dancers, a moving American flag symbolizing entertainment, perhaps masking as oppression. And, you know, the entire stage, it looked like a prison yard. It was like a rectangle concrete thing. So you had like the black performers highlighting the cycle perhaps of like mass incarceration, and, you know, perhaps like They Not Like Us wasn't just for Drake, it was for America, you know, a message of like separation and, you know, a warning that about the dangerous path that society is heading down, you know. And then he used the quote like the revolution will be televised. You got the right time, but the wrong guy. Maybe he was referring to Trump. I don't know. But this quote was obviously a play on the 1971 song by Gil Scott-Heron about how the mainstream media wouldn't cover anything revolutionary. And I guess he was the original one that was right. You know, they wouldn't cover it. So this was the Super Bowl. Nothing revolutionary or like truly controversial or anything will happen here. You know, nothing was said or done that was threatening to the elites. Everything was signed off during their performance. The Squid Game reference as entertainment masking oppression. They don't care. Who cares if you call out if you don't do anything about it? Like, so intersectional solidarity, the amount of liberals enraged by the one guy with a Palestinian flag when the Palestine issue sits again at the nexus of all these issues: policing, racial injustice, imperialist wars, genocide in the Congo, the global rise of fascism, capitalism. Go on. Really tells you that nothing like revolutionary will come from a Super Bowl performance. And of course, Kendrick Lamar, while being very brilliant and talented and no doubt has helped and inspired a lot of people, will never speak out about Palestine, Sudan, or the Congo. The Palestinian rapper and host of The Watchdog here at Mint Press News, Low-Key, pointed out in a tweet, quote, an unknown element of this is that Universal, the label both Kendrick Lamar and Drake are signed to, has a director named Haim Saban. Haim Saban of Universal Records. He's a former Israeli soldier, raised hundreds of millions for the Israeli military, and is credited with writing Biden's script on Israel. So he has an estimated net worth of like 2.8 billion, and Haim Saban is a longtime supporter and donor of many Jewish and pro-Israel causes, and has stated his main goal in life in multiple interviews is, I'm a one-issue guy and my issue is Israel. So, you know, he's become involved in politics in the mid-1990s when he felt that support for Israel was slipping in the United States. And it's worth noticing that DJ Khaled is also signed to Universal Records. So, yeah, if you're disappointed, fine. It's the Super Bowl. Again, nothing threatening to the status quo or the messaging it's ever going to happen. No intersectionality between like liberation movements, no talk of class consciousness. That would definitely never fly at the Super Bowl. It's basically a game of millionaires throwing balls to other millionaires. No talking about the exploitation of oligarchs or the Fortune 500 class. The NFL and its flagship event, the Super Bowl, serve imperialism and the repression of the working class by normalizing militarism, by distracting you, maybe an edgy performance or like a player taking a knee during a social crisis during the national anthem, but nothing emancipatory will be generated outside of this epicenter of capitalism and empire. So However, it's not business as usual, and I don't want to seem like super doom and gloom about it, because look, one ex user, the user Shabazz Arts, I can link the tweet in here later, commented that, quote, there is no consensus on what the halftime performance meant. If everyone agrees with each other, then no one is thinking critically. Okay. If everyone is arguing, it is because people are thinking critically. Not necessarily, but the fact that it's Monday and no one cares about the game itself and everyone is arguing about the halftime show is a positive sign. I don't know if I'm in complete agreement, but it's an interesting idea. If the propaganda was working, the conversation that would be dominating social media right now would revolve around the game itself and how pleased people were with the halftime performance. The circus ain't circusing anymore. I think it is. I think it still is. I think people like over the halftime performance, it's culturally a huge event in the American landscape. And I think it's doing a good job of like dividing people for sure. And I think people are just, completely content. People being like the ruling class are completely happy with that happening. So, a lot of people were really not into the game. Obviously, I don't really care about the scores, but it happened in Philly. And before we end, I just want to talk about the hypocrisy of the entire American system in the context of the Super Bowl, because the Philadelphia Eagles fans are internationally notorious for whenever their team plays in the Super Bowl, they loot Philly. They cause millions of dollars of property damage. They loot. They light cop cars on fire. And they're not considered terrorists. They're just considered a bunch of white sports fans doing their own thing. But one of my acquaintances, Ariana Jasmine, made this observation that I didn't really put two and two together about. And this is footage from the Philly riots. Yeah, ripping down power lines, destroying stoplights. Lighting fires.
Let me get this straight. When black or brown people protest against something that's harming them, for example, Palestine or abortion rights, it's rioting and looting. But then when white boys do it because they won the Super Bowl, they're just celebrating. Okay, got it.
Yep. Okay, got it. That's America for you. 100%. And also, it's just Philly. The cops, if you were listening the two-way cop scanner radios, they're like, yeah, there's nothing we can do to stop this from happening. It's inevitable. We've been here before, time and time again. And yeah, I mean, the hypocrisy is there. Someone just commented, I think now we have a small population of racist people who are emboldened to be openly racist. Zero critical thinking involved here. Yeah, so coming back to the comment that I pulled from X that I think is worth thinking about. Yeah, I don't think they need to be I don't think there's necessarily, because people aren't agreeing on the halftime show, that there's any critical thinking. I've been scrolling right-wing Twitter. I've been talking to people on the right. They're mostly just like, rap isn't music, and I will die on this hill. So, yeah, I do want to see something hopeful from the Super Bowl, but to end and to close off this segment, I think I'm seeing a lot less militarism inside this past Super Bowl performance, because I think it's just deeply unpopular right now. And I think the military is trying to find a cohesive strategy to get Gen Z on board, and the football thing isn't working anymore. And that's hopeful. I do think that when looking at the cultural event, one of the cultural events of the year, which is the Super Bowl halftime performance, people were divided just because they have completely different worldviews, and there's no connecting each other culturally because we're not talking about like socioeconomics and stuff like that. And there was a brief moment where people started agreeing on things, and that was when the CEO of United Healthcare got killed. But there was a lot of messaging and propaganda after that, and yeah, for one moment I was like, yes, come on, come on. But no, I think for me it kind of demonstrated that what we're looking at is we're going to become more and more divided. The Democrats are pretty much done as a party. Hakeem Jeffries has said that there's nothing we can do. I didn't prepare the video, but it's like they own the House, they own the Senate, and they own the White House. It's their government. Like, what do you expect us to do? I don't know, dude. Something. People elected you so they wouldn't have to deal with Republican representatives. So they're done. This is giving late stage Roman Empire vibes. I generally don't like the comparison between the United States and the Roman Empire. I think it's lazy. But yeah, I do think we're going to bread and circuses ourselves with pointless stuff like renaming the Gulf of America, caring about the Super Bowl, while everything goes down the toilets. And then, yeah, so the controlled opposition is so gross. Yes, there are. Yes, they are. Oh, yeah. And then, of course, the Republicans own the Supreme Court. So, yeah, I don't think it's just, in the end, if you're going to conscientiously boycott something, boycotting the NFL is a really good idea because there's just so many problems with it. When they have to start paying players for, hopefully someone in the comments can reference this article, but it's infamous. When they start having to pay people for like traumatic brain injuries, like pay out players and compensate them for like having degraded mental capacity. They tried to argue that like black players deserve less compensation because they didn't have as much capacity to begin with. Like the NFL's always been disgusting and horrendously racist. So, and it's also been just a spectacle sport, and that's not something we need right now. And yeah, someone says the American dream is ripping off people and getting away with it because your dad is rich. Also, it's seeing that we reference George Carlin in this episode, we could also say that the American dream is called the American dream because you have to be sleeping to believe in it. I think someone said what the F in the comments about the paying players compensation for traumatic brain injuries. Yeah, the NFL's always been gross. So, all right, let's see what we got for comments. Do we have any starred comments? Oh, because we have time for a Q&A, I believe. So, yeah, if there's no, there should be questions. Yeah, someone says, same thing in India. The opposition is so dead. Yes. Didn't the BJP like finally take Delhi? I don't know who can challenge Modi anymore. Seems like he's got that on lock. I lived in Mumbai for a while, so that was always kind of in like BJP territory, at least in the neighborhood I was in. So, yeah. For coming from Ireland, every town in Ireland rallies every Saturday. We don't look to America for any direction like some of the world. Yeah, and the problem is now that like all this is happening, governments communicate with each other. They look at what works, and they see what they want to implement, and they take advice. So one of the things that's so dangerous about what Israel's doing is because other countries who want to do the same thing are looking at it. India is looking at it for how to deal with its Muslim population. Also, what they want to do with Kashmir. And it's not just them, it's many other countries because, of course, they learn from each other. The South African government is now like certain coalitions in South Africa are like, could we reinstitute apartheid if we take power again? And become good allies with Israel. We have the backing of like Elon Musk and the oligarchs. It's a Yeah, it's pretty scary. So, looks like we've got some questions. All right, here we go. Jedzia. I fear lots of Americans now feel like they participated in an act of revolution by watching the performance. Now they will continue to do nothing. Yes. Yes, absolutely. They saw the performance and they were like, hell yeah, got the message out there. It's going to change things. But nothing changes without actions. And yeah, they're not going to do anything. It wasn't a call to arms. It was an intelligence performance. I don't know why people are saying it was bad. It wasn't. But yeah, it was a Super Bowl performance. It was signed off because it was inoffensive. Like everybody knows about the prison industrial complex and how horrible it is. You know, yeah, everybody like gets it about. Some people get it about capitalism. Some people don't. But it's not a threat. It wasn't overt enough for that. So. But anyways, to circle back, yeah, now they will continue to do nothing. Yes, everybody who's vote shaming you about like talking to you about how Harris didn't win will continue to do nothing. So I hear Master Sheikh, I hear Sudan is even worse than Gaza. In terms of death toll, it seems likely, although it's hard to get good numbers. It also depends on what you mean by worse. Because they're completely different situations. But yes, it's completely atrocious. And I think we're going to need to do an episode on that now. I just have to find a guest. I have a couple in mind, but I have to check their schedules. But yeah, it's just so much bad stuff to kind of like try and cover. Because now you have the stuff in Congo and the prison breakout that's been atrocious as well. So Neil Curry, they do remember Clinton chuckling at her live link to the Libyan leader's horrific demise. Oh, yeah. While she was getting hooked up, Hillary Clinton said she probably had something to do with the death of Gaddafi. Yeah. Someone says, hating on the yucky whiteys now? Sure. I mean, I don't have any kinship with fascists. So if they happen to be white, that's cool. Yeah. Totally. Anyways, we've got seriously, be humble, sit down. What a joke. A rap song based on They Live might as well have been singing Obey, Obey. I don't know the context of the song. Okay. So I can't comment on that one specifically, but yeah, maybe. I'll have to circle back and look at it. All right. Instead of giving us Kendrick Lamar for the halftime show, where the hell was the Super Bowl ad about reparations for Black Americans? Was that ever an ad? I think it may have been. I doubt they would never do anything like that. No, the most the ruling class will do is platform really brilliant and successful Black man for a performance that they sign off on. Because providing the stage, providing all the logistical support for it, and they can shut it down at any moment. So yeah, that would never happen. Someone says Egypt is the second biggest owner of M1 Abrams tanks after Saudi Arabia. I think the third biggest owner of Apaches too. This is an interesting thing to point out because supplying countries with U.S. military arms is one of the ways we control them. So we can sell you some helicopters and some tanks, but if you want the fancy American stuff, you're going to need a lot of replacement parts. And if you do anything we don't like, we can cut off those replacement parts, and slowly your entire fleet of helicopters and your entire motor pool of tanks will stop functioning because you don't have the replacement parts and we have you under sanctions where you can't get them anymore. So yeah, it's common US tactic. Scott Ritter, def a limited hangout. He thinks Trumpenstein is playing 5D chess and is all in on the MAGA chud train. I haven't listened to his stuff in a while. I do like some of his analysis for sure. I don't know. He's like a patriot, and he wants to believe that this country isn't going down the sinker. I disagree because I like to do a material analysis and a class analysis, and I grew up amongst a bunch of posh people. They literally don't give a fuck about you or America. They care about their bottom line. Trump is there for his buddies, and he doesn't really want to run the country. He wants to be the chairman of the board, and he wants Elon Musk to run it, and he wants to be the chairman. That's what he wants. And he wants the clout of being president. But I'm not sure how invested he is in any of this. So Musk offers almost 100 billion for control of OpenAI. Oh, good. Larry Ellison from Oracle, I'm sure would like to work with Elon Musk on that. So Egypt is lining up tanks on their border, just saber rattling. Yeah, I mean, they've done this before during the Rafah crossing. They sent in tanks over there. And I think like 1 or 2 Egyptian soldiers were killed by Israeli fire, and they didn't do anything. It's probably just saber rattling, yeah. Justin Hill says he thinks he can make a deal Trump to people send Palestinians to Jordan. Well, yeah, there's a op-ed written in the I think it was the Middle East Eye, wasn't it, or Middle East Monitor? I think it was the Middle East Eye, saying that, yeah, sources close to the Jordanian government says, like, they know they can't defeat Israel in a fight, but if they start sending thousands and thousands and thousands of refugees across the Jordanian border, they'll have to, because their government would be literally in risk of collapse if that did happen, and they would have to fight. So, yeah, I think he can make a deal, but no, he can't make a deal. He can't make deals. He might be looking for silver lining, as someone in the comments said, but what did he say about Russia? Okay, before I get into office, Russia and Ukraine, there'll be a ceasefire. And then, of course, I've mentioned this multiple times. Multiple Russian ministers were like, nope, that's not possible. And it's not possible. So he says, like, he's going to make these deals, and then he hopes, like, the news cycle will overturn. So they paused the tariffs on Mexico and Canada. He pumped this vision of a PR victory. There's no PR victory. I mean, there's no real victory. They're just, Mexico and Canada are doing what they already agreed to under the Biden administration. And now he postponed it for like a month, maybe 3 months. And then it's going to keep pushing it until the news cycle turns over and over, and people forget, all the supporters forget what actually happened. It's going to be the same, I bet. That's what I'm banking on. There's no 5D chess, okay? He came up with this art of the deal BS, while he was doing like so much coke in the 80s that he now has to wear diapers. Okay. Like, what 5D chess? Like, it's all very transparent. He is a real estate developer. He wants to develop Gaza. He probably knows he can't because Hamas still controls it. And so he's trying to loosen the political position of Saudi Arabia in order to get something that's more favorable to himself and Israel, which he is beholden to. All right. Trump is just trying to bully, because that's what he is. Someone says, United States of amnesia. Yeah. So, don't remember anything. Just watch the Super Bowl and argue about the halftime performance and how, your stupid white MAGA uncle wants them to like play Creed and like washed up bands from the 80s and not any of this. I don't know, like what kind of horrible things they would call it, like urban music or something. Yeah. So I'm not. I think the purpose of the Super Bowl was still served, but I'm glad that the military propaganda hopefully is not as effective as it once was. So, anyways, we are on Patreon here at Min Press News, so check us out there if you want to support what we're doing. $5 a month definitely helps. And if you can't because you're being nickel and dime by the Squid Games of late stage capitalism, just like, share, and subscribe. And we're glad to see you here. So if you're interested more about like the cultural issues surrounding the halftime game, I'll be interviewing Immortal Technique later this week. I'll bring it up, see what he has to say, and then glad you checked into the weekly Monday episode of Mint Press News, where we talk about whatever the dysfunctional, crazy stuff that happened over the weekend, because that's just how it works now. So thanks y'all so much. We'll be back next Monday, and we hope to see you there. Cheers, y'all, and have a good night and the rest of your week, if that's even possible, given the current circumstances. Cheers, y'all.